Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 1. In this class, I'll take you through the most important JavaScript array methods and give you a very good practical base for dealing with and manipulating arrays in JavaScript. Today, we're going to be working with a very foundational JavaScript array method called forEach. But before we get to that, I want to briefly cover a JavaScript statement on which all of these methods rely, and that is the for loop. So if we take a look at the screen here, you can see that I've constructed this array of cities, and there are 6 objects in the cities array, each representing a different city from around the world, and each of these objects has 4 pertinent properties. Let's say that I wanted to simply console log the name of each city. A great way, the preferred way to do that would be through a for loop. In JavaScript, to construct a for loop, we first write the word for, and then in the parentheses here go 3 different things. And they can be customizable based on your particular implementation, but they very, very frequently follow the same pattern. The first thing we're going to put in the parentheses here is what's called the initialization. And here we need a variable to kind of keep track of where we're at in the array. 99% of the time, what you're going to write is let I equal 0. All right? We start counting at the 0th index. I'm going to skip this second thing for a second and go to the third thing. The third thing that we want to put here is what to do with the variable I once we're through with one iteration in the for loop. And again, in almost all situations, you just want to count up by 1. So 0, 1, 2. So I'm just going to write I++. In the middle is a very important conditional here where we tell the for loop how long we want it to run. This cities array only has 6 cities in it. So we only want the for loop to run 6 times. And if you think about, we're starting counting at 0, and the length of this array is 6. So we want to go from 0 up to 5 because that's 6 numbers. More generally, we want to write I less than the name of the array dot length. That's going to ensure always that our for loop runs until the end of the array, but not further. Now, in curly braces, we get into the body of the for loop. And what you write in the first line here is very important. And I see a lot of beginning and intermediate students struggling in for loops because they try to get ahead of themselves. They try to start doing the work that they want to do in the for loop before this first line of code in the body. I would write this 100% of the time. Const current element equals the name of the array, cities, indexed at I. All right. Now, the one change you might make here is instead of saying current element, which is pretty general, if you look at this array, it's a cities array. So the current element is really a current city. Okay. We want to be aware of the plural and singular nature of the constants that we create. And now here you can do whatever you want with that reference to the current object or current city object that you're at in the array. So let's just console log, I think we said we wanted to console log current city dot name, right? And I'll save that and go over here and type, we'll just run this file and let's see what gets console logged. You can see that the names of the 6 cities are being consoled. Now, the nice thing about the for loop is that that letter I, or the variable I that we created, is available inside the for loop. So let me I'll just console log I as well. And you can see that you have the index associated with each city available to you. So if you want to run some sort of conditional, you can. Let's see if we can only we want to console log the city name of every other city, right? I could come in here and write an if statement that says if I remainder 2 equals 0, then console log the current city name. All right, let's see if this works. And in fact, it does. It's console logging the first element, or the 0th element, New York City, then Lagos, then Sao Paulo. So we have both of these things available to us, the index, and of course, because of this first line in the for loop, we have the reference to the current object or the current element that we're at in the array. Now let's look at how we can do this with a forEach method. I'm first going to take this code and just move it down a little bit and comment it out. And we're going to recreate those two pieces of functionality, console logging the name of every city and console logging the name of every other city, with JavaScript's built-in forEach method. When we use JavaScript methods, they always are array methods. They always follow the same pattern. It's going to be the name of the array, dot, and then the name of the method that you're using. In this case, it's going to be forEach. And then in parentheses is going to go what's called a callback function. And a callback function in this case is just something that gets called for each element in the array. So I'm going to actually explicitly define a function called handle city, right? And we'll do some work in this in a second. But first, I want to register that as the callback function for forEach. So I'll put handle city up here. And this function is going to automatically get certain arguments from the forEach method. And the first of that is going to be the current element. And I'm actually going to write this because we're handling each city in the cities array. I'm going to write current city, all right? And now if I go in here and just console log current city dot name, let's see what happens here. You can see that we're getting the console log of each of the names of the cities, which is what we want. And that's what we had earlier in the for loop. Now, how could we console log the name of every other city? Well, it's not immediately obvious, but there's actually another argument that the callback function for forEach gets, which is index. So JavaScript, sort of under the hood, handles the functionality of passing this callback function the index in the array that we're at. So let me just first console log that index. Okay, let's go over here and print that out, or console log that out, and you can see all of the indices are showing. So we could go in here and just recreate that functionality that we had in the for loop and say this, and let's go down in here and put the console log in the if statement, and let's see what that gives us. You can see that nicely we're now console logging every other city name. I personally like this syntax a little bit more than the for loop if you're trying to do something pretty simple like this. But you can see it's, as far as code complexity, you could even argue that this up here looks more complex. It's the same number of lines. But what I've done here is I have explicitly defined a function called handle city. You usually won't see it done like that. I'm going to go ahead and also comment out this callback function, and we'll handle the callback function in a slightly different way. What you usually see most people doing is just defining an inline callback function in the forEach method, usually an arrow function. So I'm just going to write an arrow function like this. And this arrow function is, of course, going to get the same arguments passed to it as our explicitly defined callback function did. So the first is going to be current city. And I'll just go in here and console.log current city.name. Let's see what that gives us. Okay, all of the names. And this can also get the index. So now if I go in here and say if index remainder with regards to 2 is equal to 0, then only console log the current city's name. Let's see if that works. You can see that it works. So you can kind of compare the complexity, or at least the perceived complexity of all of these different ways of handling what was essentially the same task. And I'll get rid of this here. I think that this is a sort of the preferred way for dealing with an array, where you need to do something for each element in the array. So what is common here that we'll see in other array methods is that pattern that I mentioned before. The name of the array, followed by a dot, followed by the name of the array method, followed by a callback function, which will usually be defined inline. So that's the forEach method. And we obviously showed how it's related to a for loop. In our next lesson, we'll look at a JavaScript array method where we can actually modify the array that we have. I'll see you then.